Chapter 32, Gyllerhorn's Fire Spark Raw Link, 3011-2015, Translator, Tumorfreethoughts/TPSTT, March 12, 2018, Editor, Hands of Vecna/Vecna, 29-11-2018, Translation Link, __TLN. This chapter has too many slangs. Simpler ones where meaning doesn't change much when translated to English has been incorporated into sentence normally. For the ones where the literal meaning and actual meaning is quite different is translated literally followed by a TLN. Furthermore, this chapter really shows the unique writing skill and quirks of the author, so I feel like I couldn't fully capture what the author wanted to convey with the translation, so some sentences don't have as much of a succinct effect as they should, and some sentences have been split into two to better make sense rather than using 5 conjunctions forcibly connecting into one. TL disclaimer: I have no experience in translating anything, nor am I great at either English or J.A. This is not machine translated, but J.A. Pains to English dictionary is occasionally used for words I am not sure about. I will not be able to fully translate the author's jokes, puns, or slangs if there are any. I will try to stick with literal translation where possible in the context. If there is anything I don't understand, I will leave it in a bracket, X. If there is an error in the translation, website, sentence structure, or format, please let me know in the comments below or DM me on the Discord and I will try my best to fix them. Any constructive feedback is appreciated. Author note: Gyllerhorn's skill at a glance near sparks overheat self-destruct great explosion. Author note end, __time was the night. At the end of what seemed like a long but short day, I was lying and turning on the bed whilst lost in thought. Aries had already gone to bed and Libra, as usual, was standing in the corner of the room. There was not even a single movement, so I might have really end up thinking of her as a furniture, but if something were to have happened she would have quickly responded. To solve the problem the city was facing, the best scenario would have been to make Merak take action. However, to begin with, as Merak sat in this country's position of king, getting into contact with him was difficult. I can easily infiltrate to meet him without being detected, but I can't really call that very amicable. It feels like I'm repeating this again and again, but fundamentally, I want to stay unrelated to the actual turmoil. And, as for how to get into contact with him, really, what should I do? Libra had more or less detected Merak's life force, however, it did not look like it would move out of the castle anytime soon. Move, Sky King. Or do you intend to abandon the T.I.tle of Sky King and become unmoving king? I'm BAC. Did everyone go to sleep already? While I was somewhat turning into a useless furniture who couldn't come up with any good solution, a capable advisor opened the door and had came in nonchalantly. Even though it was in a very faint voice, she politely said the returning greetings. Maybe it's what they call uprightness. TLN, details in the footnote 1. There was a lot of things I wanted to ask Dina, and Libra also slightly moved her line of sight to check with me with her eyes whether she should pursue them now. However, I stayed silent and shook my head a little, telling her not to do so. It is because Aries was asleep right now. I believed there was no reason to wake him up. If we wanted to question her, it would have to be done tomorrow. And, as such, we will begin the interrogation of the accused. Everything you say will be recorded in my memory, so please don't hold back and reveal everything. Next morning, Libra and I captured Dina, who was still half asleep as she got up from the bed. We took her to the table and surrounded her so that she could not escape. TLN, the word used is Renkau, which mean to take a person somewhere, but it's a specific phrase in J.A. Pains used only in a situation where police takes a suspect to the next destination, police car, police station, or to court. In this case, it's used to mean take because they're technically in the same room, but it's a small comedy to mean they're kind of role-playing a police interrogation. In actuality, I also thought it was about time we put a scalpel on the mystery behind Dina. TLN, doctor reference. For the younger audience, it means to dissect, or in the simpler term to get to know their mystery. For a character that was originally a background NPC, she was too competent, and furthermore, she was able to use teleportation magic. It was as if she was just asking people to suspect her. One explanation was that her presence was too thin, that we simply didn't notice her in the past. However, I didn't think that was the case here. Honestly speaking, her presence is not thin. It's thick. Perhaps she just changed compared to the past. However, looking at her current her, it was hard to imagine that she was that stealthy in the past. If it was a game, it was understandable. Yes, if it was a game. However, this was a reality. Other than me, Aries and Libra also existed. Apparently, Libra's data had fried. However, it was strange that even Aries had forgotten about her. Firstly, Dina. The teleportation magic that you use, that is X-Gate, correct? I have been informed of the condition, unusable without consent from Rupa-sama. That requirement matches to be one of the activation condition of X-Gate. Yes. That's right. Oi, she just casually admitted it. Or rather, if I think about it properly, it's not really something she needs to hide, nor did she actually try to hide about it. It's a rare skill, but it seems like I've been brought to this world using that skill, and if I consider the fact that even the young low-level elf could use it. Well. The fact that I am even thinking too deeply about it makes me feel dumb. Next point. What are you really? I know because of the faintly memory of my past, but you were alive 200 years ago, which means that at the very least you should not be of a human race. Having said that, you don't seem to possess the characteristic features of an elf, flugel, nor a vampire race. I'm just a half-elf. Now that she said it, there were such things as half. If she was a mixed-racial child born between an elf and a human, both the appearance of a human and the lifespan of an elf can be explained. In the game, the characters could not be made into half. So this is also completely my mistake and misunderstanding. TLN, half is AJ.A. Pain slang, details in footnote 2, how about all the diverse skills? I trained myself to the best of my ability in the past 200 years. So that this time I don't become a background, Because it is an important thing you had to say it twice, I totally understand and sympathize. What should I do? There is nothing more to ask anymore. She had easily and completely overcome our questioning just like that, and Dina somewhat seemed elated by that. I looked at Libra to gain help, however, she just casually made an X mark with both her arms. It seemed in this interrogation, it was my loss and the final verdict was not guilty. Maybe I just thought about it too much? The headache I experienced at that time might just be a normal headache and a mere coincidence. It did not seem like there was any special meaning behind it. Not good, this is quite embarrassing for me. Or more like, I should just use the observing eye. I did know why I didn't think of and didn't feel like using that against her until now. Even thought it was a bit strange. Dina level 300 species, half-elf CLA.S.S level, Acolyte, 100 Priest, 100 Mage, 100 HP, 11000 SP, 9800 STR, Strength/Attack Power 650 Dex, Dexterity 1000 VIT, Vitality 683 Int, Intelligence 3850 AGI, Ability/Speed 900 MND, Mind Power 2967 Luck, Luck 643 What the H.E.L.L. She's actually quite strong, isn't she, this Dina? Not as much as me or the 12 heavenly stars, but this is something at the level where she would be able to fight against the 7 luminaries on the equal footing. Though I feel like there's something determinative that I've overlooked, but whilst I was thinking that, Dina's line of sight moved past me and glanced at the clock that was hanging on the wall, as if something just popped into her head. She suddenly raised her voice a little and said, that's right. I've just thought about it, but if it is Libra-sama, I can take her anywhere using my teleportation magic. It's impossible if it's me, but it's fine with Libra. Yes, inorganic objects and items are not included in the X-Gate usage condition. Otherwise, clothing would come off when I use it. And Libra-sama is a golem, therefore she can be carried through using X-Gate. This meant that the reason I was unable to pass the requirement for X-Gate was due to the fact that somewhere deep down, I did not fully trust Dina or was subconsciously rejecting her. And the fact that I was doubting her at that moment meant that I did not fully trust her. Perhaps this was seen as rejecting her and thus I was unable to meet the prerequisite. DAM.N. It means if I didn't doubt her for no reason I can also teleport with her. If you want, do you want to test it out now? Rather than using it for the first time when we really need it, it is probably better to experience it in person a few times first so that when we need it, the skill can be used immediately and efficiently. Libra, what do you think? I personally think there is a value to testing it out. I have determined that there is no problem with it. Jupiter also has not closed in on the surroundings. As long as he does not possess a way to conveniently and precisely determine my movement, I believe the probability of him using this gap to his advantage is around 5% only. I was previously informed by Libra herself that her maximum detection range was as wide as 150 kilometers. Which meant we could ascertain from her statement that at the very least Jupiter was not within the surrounding 150 kilometers. Therefore Libra's statement that he would not be able to make use of the gap and appear unless he moved at the same time as the teleportation magic was reasonable. It should be fine then, there should be no problem. Probably. Thinking that, I allowed for the teleportation magic to be tested. That's right. While we are at it, why don't we try and order Rupasama's equipment together that we had recently gotten our hands on again? I'm just not sure which of the weapons are useful or not. I don't know much about weapons, you see. Understood. Master, may I have about 10 minutes? You may. The scenario where Jupiter was able to show up within a mere 10 minutes time frame would have to be very exceptional, therefore it should not come to fruition. As such, with a peace of mind, I sent the two of them off. After looking at them actually teleport away, I returned to my room to waste some time. I'll suppose we can start moving after the two of them return. And then, I guess we'll talk about how to get into contact with Merak. After I was thinking like that, after a mere 7 minutes, there was a sign of someone attacking the white side of the town as there was a lot of ruckuses. What for real? Throughout his life, the Sky King Merak had lived side by side with glory. Being well featured was a given for him, he possessed a very powerful innate divine magic potential, and most important of all, he was born with pure white wings that shone even brighter than light itself. His father was the king of the Flugel race, and his mother was the righteous queen. He was blessed with everything he might need the moment he was born, a pinnacle of an existence from the very beginning of his life. Ag.O.D's child of light born into the royalty, that was what people had called him, and he himself did not doubt that he had to stand above others. He had believed that he was special, he was a child born from the king, and possessed superior innate potential, thus it was normal for him to lead the way and guide other people. He had believed and was sure that he was to save others when they struggled and got lost. However, it was the route that was predetermined for him, and was never something that he had ever gotten a say in. The fact was, ever since he was born, he never had to make a choice by himself. But she was different. Rupasmaffel was different. For a girl with forbidden jet black wings, there was no such thing as glory. She had stood in the position polar opposite to him. A sinister and ominous child, devil's child, abominable and disgusting child. She was given those names, rocks were thrown at her, and she was constantly exposed to, looked at, and held with contempt, and with scorn. Even her name Rupasmaffel was created and given to degrade and deprive her, a name created by combining the names of two evil devils, Halfas and Malfas. TLN, Halfas, plus Malfas, equals Rupasmaffel. In truth, she most likely had a different name, her real name, but she was not even permitted to name herself that. Yet, she did not let herself become rotten, instead she took that as a nourishment to proceed forward. TLN, play on a word in the raw, used nourishment but means a source of encouragement. She turned the whole world into her enemy, then crushed them, mocking the entire Flugel race who were crying in the tiny settlement by calling them small and insignificant. She waged war indiscriminately against various countries around the world, and ironically the way she conquered them was just like her devilish nicknames, causing everyone to fear and think of her as if she truly was a devil's child. But to Merak, she shone ever so brightly. The throne that Merak sat on was given to him. It was not something he had won with his power like her. Merak's subjects were people that were there since the beginning. They were not like her loyal retainers who had followed her out of their own free wills. Merak's life was predetermined from the very beginning. It was not like the way of life that she had chosen for herself. The one who possess and the one who don't. White and black. Light and darkness. Without a doubt, Merak had stood in the environment that was more favored. However, when you truly opened the lid, she sat in the one true throne, and had already climbed to a position to become an existence where not even the demon race could touch, and before he noticed, he was looking up to her. TLN, asterisk and is a literal translation of a slang, asterisk can also be taken to mean rich and the poor, can also be taken to mean removing all pretense and facing up to a reality. For one true throne, see footnote 3 for detail. Could he achieve what she did? To be born with black wings, to be exposed to a COA.R.S.E environment, and yet flip everything around and climb to that point. Could he do something like that? Impossible. There was not a chance that he could do it. The definition of the ruler was her. Whatever the circumstance, however harsh the condition, she would be the one to grab onto the supremacy and reign supreme. That was what it meant to be a real ruler, a true king. As a consequence, even now Merak was pondering. From the day he struck down Rupaz, he had been questioning himself every day. And without the slightest bit of doubt, he always reached the same answer. I am not qualified to be a king. That's why, king, you should show the power of the heroes to the despicable mixed wings, and make them quiet down. No, more than that, we should just exile them. The citizens' stress is also heightening. This is happening because you are strangely lenient to them. Merak was thinking whilst people looked and chirped around him. These people had stressed the importance of the whiteness of their wings, however, that was the old way of thinking. If you maintained that mentality, then the Flugel race was bound to degenerate sometime in the future. To begin with, the absolute number of Flugel race was low, and the number of children born with a mixed color was quite high. In a place where there was an abundance of mana, the occurrence rate was very high, perhaps the amount of mana in the air turned the wings black. Which means the color of the wings are determined before a Flugel is born based on the abundance and quality of the mana, hence perhaps it indicates, maybe having the black wings is superior in terms of quality. Perhaps even the fact that Flugel's base wings color being white is due to the fundamental reason that Flugel had lived in the mountaintop where there was only a little mana in the surrounding environment. This was the way Merak had been thinking things recently. And if this line of thought was correct, it would mean that not only was the Flugel race holding themselves back, they had been trying to reverse the beneficial evolution they were gifted with. To start with, although these guys had been chirping like they were great, the original inhabitants of the country were the mixed-winged Flugels. Originally the country of Gjallarhorn was established by Merak for the mixed-winged Flugels who had lost their home due to the persecution they had suffered. It was a way to atone for the sin he had committed towards Rupaz after he had betrayed her. Ironically, however, these guys were, in turn, chased out by one of Rupaz's subordinate, one of the 12 heavenly stars, part Helios the Maiden. TLN, i.e. Virgo. As a result, Merak had accepted them as there were no alternatives, but soon afterwards these guys started asserting their power, and started throwing rocks at the Flugels with the mixed-colored wings. There is not a single difference as compared to before. If anything, the ones growing arrogant and impudent were these guys, and the mixed-winged Flugels were the victims. Hence, Merak should have told them off. To tell them to be reasonable and to shut up. However, Merak had also happened to be able to sympathize with the white-winged Flugels. A tradition that had been set down for many years, a common sense. To be told to suddenly change that was impossible, to think that he should at least respect their point was also reasonable. The current situation was the result of him continually being indecisive. Black and the white, both sides' dissatisfaction had just been building up. The respect towards Merak was lost, and it had reached a point where it wasn't strange for the build-up to explode any time. I am incompetent. This was always the end result, the answer that he reached whenever he asked himself the question. It always ended in him self-deprecating. Today alone, however, merely reaching that answer was not the end. The price of delaying action on this issue. The time to pay the price of that debt had arrived. One corner of the White Town had exploded. The moment that he had received that report, he knew and learned that it had finally reached the stage where the civil war could no longer be stopped. Author note, negative points about the 7 heroes. Megrez was actually a competent, wise king. Whatever was said about it, his country was actually well developed, to the point where it was the Midgard's most magically developed country. He created the guardian deity Levia and magic engines, and had various infrastructures to teach anyone about pretty much anything with open arms, and was well respected by his citizens. However, he condemned himself very heavily and could no longer bear the words of praise that he received, and ended up retiring as the king. Passing on to the next generation, he had chosen to retire. After that, humans who had sat on the position of the king was taken in by the power of the seat and claimed, "I'm the king so I'm great," and had turned into an idiot. Eventually leading to their relatives and their children who had claimed, "I'm an.o.bly so I'm great," and had turned into generations of idiots. Finally to the point they could not be helped. He had a long life, so he should have stayed sitting on the position of the king, but he was often called incompetent, but he was by no means incompetent. If anything, the biggest problem is that he stepped down from the position of the king. Merak, even among the 7 heroes, he was the most gentle. As a consequence, he was not suited to be a king. Due to his indecisiveness, he would never state things clearly, and always got lead on by the surroundings. An introvert with non-existent leaders. H+P skill. Bennett Nash, an unknown. Possesses a high military might, however, completely ignored all emergency requests from Merak and Megrez and shows absolutely no intention of communicating or helping other countries. As a king, she is better than the other 2, her country is thriving. Deceased Alioth knows pasta, author note end, TLN, it's a small J.A. Pain's culture lesson. If you don't care, I suggest you just skip because it is not very relevant to the story. 1 Situational courtesy. J.A. Pan has a lot of those courtesy phrases that are used by everyone living there, from primary schoolers to businessmen. In this chapter, Dino was coming back from the outside and was trying to say Tadema, informal, or Tadema o modern inerimas.h.I plus ta/ka etikamas.h.I plus ta, formal, but it was cut off after the first few because she saw that everyone was already asleep or going to sleep. Often these phrases are said even if no one else is there or listening, hence Rupa's saying that she was being courteous. For anyone interested, the 4 below are common phrases that popped out from the top of my head. Itikameso/itarashai, used right before going out. Itikameso is used by the person going out, and the itarashai is used by the person staying behind. Literally meaning I'm going now/please go. I'm going now is self-explanatory, but please go can be taken to mean please go and come back, off you go, take care or have a nice day or something along those meaning. Tadema, tademeka etikamas.h.I plus ta/okaranese, literally meaning I'm back/welcome back. I think both are fairly self-explanatory. Ojamas.h.I plus masu/ojamas.h.I plus mas.h.I plus ta, used when someone enters another's house or another's room, temple, etc. Sometimes used by the students when they enter another cla.s.surum too, but it's probably not too common. Literally meaning I'm intruding/I have intruded. Itadakamesu, probably the most common and well-known, internationally, of these phrases along with the next one. Used before having a meal. Literally meaning I'm devouring/receiving, but in a very humble context. Used to signify that you are about to receive a meal, either when given by another, and also to mean that you are going to receive the gift of life. Gakisusamads.h.I plus ta, similar to one above, this one is used after the meal. Literally meaning I have devoured or thank you for the meal, but in a humble way. 2 half I translated half quite softly above, but half actually has a bit more to it than just under a fantasy/game setting. J.A. Pan is quite H.O.M. organized in terms of race. I don't want racism war in comments section, though this chapter in itself is just asking for it, so I'll write/wrote it softly, but in J.A. Pan there are certain views about foreigners, and the phrase, literally meaning half, is used where the children is half J.A. Pains and half foreigner. It's probably not as bad in recent years. That's all I'm going to say. 3. One true throne. So it's not really one true throne in the raw, but there are many ways to say king in J.A. Pains, IMO. The most straightforward is the actual word for king, or OU. That's the word used to describe the actual king and the actual position of the king. An example would be like England's queen. Throughout this whole series, the king that's used to describe Rupas is Hu. Often Hu is used in literature or and sometimes by academics because often the one who is Hu doesn't have to be an actual king. Furthermore, Hu is often connected to something negative because it's often given to someone that rules by fear, by conquering or after much bloodshed. The word alone can already mean ruler or king, which was what was used for the part of footnote 3, it didn't have the OU part. But in the context, it means the throne, but because the author distinguished the seat of Aj from Uza, I wrote it as one true throne. Explaining in popular anime/manga context, consider One Piece. Readers would be familiar with Haki, one's willpower/spirit, and Hushoku no Haki. Both of the Aj in the second one uses the word. The readers would know it as Conqueror's Haki or King's Haki, but it literally means color of the supreme ruler's spirit. Anyways, getting back to the context, the position of the pirate king itself is not an official position of king of a country, yet is a pinnacle existence, a supreme ruler who rules the sea, freedom, and pirates. In a way, to get to a position of the pirate king you get there by having a very strong will and to fight your way up there and must be acknowledged by others. It's something that a person earns by themselves and only gets it because the others acknowledge that specific position, yet is not an actual position of the king, though it could be. Chapter 33, Agakeros' Ultrasound Raw link, June 12, 2015, Translator, Tumorfreethoughts/TPSTT, July 12, 2018, Editor, Hands of Vecna/Vecna, -12 to 2018, Translation link, __TL Disclaimer, I have no experience in translating anything, nor am I great at either English or J.A. Pains. This is not machine translated, but J.A. Pains to English dictionary is occasionally used for words I am not sure about. I will not be able to fully translate the author's jokes, puns, or slangs if there are any. I will try to stick with literal translation where possible in the context. If there is anything I don't understand, I will leave it in a bracket, X. If there is an error in the translation, website, sentence structure, or format, please let me know in the comments below or DM me on the Discord and I will try my best to fix them. Any constructive feedback is appreciated. All of a sudden, the white side of the city was showered by the bullets made of wind, destroying many houses in the process. Many were either injured by the process or crushed by the buildings collapsing onto them. The white town, which should have been in peace, was instantly enveloped by confusion and fear, plunging the place into a turmoil. It's an attack. The ones from the Black Town have started attacking us. Jupiter, who had adorned the appearance of a human, spread false information to that place. It was a given that the attack itself was conducted by himself, however, no one knew about that fact in that place. The place was already distrustful to begin with, so it was normal for them to think that even this attack was instigated by the Black Town. The attack alone was already enough, however, a follow-up voice rang repeatedly inside everyone's head. Kill. Just by listening to that voice, it was enough to peel away people's sanity. It was a devilish voice which permeated into one's sanity. It gave off a discomfort many tens of times worse than the sound created by scr.a.pinggla.s.s with one's nail, yet this sound rocked the heart of everyone in that place. Kill them if you detest them. That instance, just for a briefest of a moment, they got a glimpse of the embodiment of a devil. Head of a goat, body of a human, and wings of the bat growing on its back, it was truly as if the drawing of a devil in the myth had come to life and had appeared as a shadow. That shadow had talked to them, bringing forth the hatred within themselves. Kill them. In the eyes of the people, sanity disappeared. Sudden attack, confusion, fear, and incitement. As if to add something more, a call of enticement from the devil. This devil's call pulled forth the Flugel's will to discriminate against the other side, which was barely held in check until now, causing people to started picking up weapons into their hands. Kill them. Kill them. Banish them. Taken in by the madness, the descendants of the angels were screaming as they proceeded in tanks. Regardless of age or gender, even if they were young children, they spewed hatred and joined the ranks. There, breaks from reason no longer existed. The guys from the White Town are coming to attack us. They're intending to ma.s.saker us. The Black Town was in an uproar. They had known from the start that the White Town had hated them and tried to get rid of them, but they had remained optimistic. They said the original inhabitants of the country were them, and that King said he had built the country for them. That was why they believed it was going to be fine. On the other hand, there were those that believed something like this happening was a matter of course. The man with the darkish red wings that met Ruppaz was one of them. Do you see it? Look, that fence-sitting opportunist of a king is undeserving of respect. To begin with, it was none other than him that struck down Ruppaz 200 years ago and turned our lives into a living hell. In the end, he's with the White Wings supremacists. No different from the others, a man who belittled us. S.N.A.T.C.H. It away from them at that moment, a voice echoed in. In a flash, sanity melted away. A devil's call brought forth a raging madness to the surface. The call ran through the Black Town, amplifying their hatred. S.N.A.T.C.H. It from them before they take. I don't want them to take it away from me. That was what everyone was thinking of. It was an exceedingly natural train of thought. They were the victims whose things had been S.N.A.T.C. head away. For the whole time until now. They were oppressed. They were discriminated against for merely having different colored wings, and had to live by without having a place to call home. Finally, they saw in Ruppaz the appearance of a ruler they had been dreaming of. Yet, Merak had struck that ruler down, returning them to the oppressed position they had originally been in. Would everything they have be taken away again? Would they have to go through it all over again? I'll take it from them. Someone cursed it out loud. As if we're going to let them take it away from us, this time we'll be the one doing the taking. Another person who had become delirious shouted. I'm fed up already, we've had enough. Why is it always us that has to go through this? That's right, it's just injustice. Pick up your weapon. I'll teach them the fear of getting everything taken away. Who cares about the king? Take this country away from them, make this country ours. Governed by murderous impulse, the descendants of the angels were shouting left and right, and proceeding in a group. Gender and age were irrelevant. If you would not protect yourself, you would not be protected. If you would not take, it would be taken from you. TLN. In this place, there was no longer any dream for peace. There were only a few hundred years' worth of ACCU-malated resentment and hatred. Asterisk. This ain't good. I was flying an altitude that only the high-level flugels could reach. Overlooking the country of Gjallarhorn, I was at a loss. No, maybe I should say it had finally started. Someone's attack on the White Town served as the impetus for them to start rampaging, and in response to that, the Black Town had also started rampaging. Well, in all probability, it's probably the work of that demon called Jupiter. I felt as though the timing for it was too strange, but it was certain that he had a way to determine Libra's absence and acted in that time slot. However I thought about it, it did not seem to be his work alone. From what I had observed, I could see that everyone in the country was affected by the madness status. Madness status signifies debuffed state of a person where they have lost all reason and is governed by anger. In exchange, the affected person's attack power multiplies and becomes unable to use anything other than a basic attack. TLN, MMO lesson, buff and debuff are status alignment on a character/NPC where the original status gets altered. Buff is positive, debuff is negative. The buff/debuff can be cast on the players, the allies, or the enemy. And basic attack aka auto attack, normal attack, etc. is the attack a player gains usually at the start of the game. It's not considered a skill and often does minimal damage. It's used as a filler for when all the skills are unable to be used or player is just lazy or overpowered. E.g. normal attack for swordsman/mage is the swinging motion of their sword/staff respectively. However, as far as I was aware, there was no skill in existence which might give madness debuff at this large a scale. Thus, this magic was of the moon attribute rather than wind. However, it should not be possible for Jupiter, who seemed to possess the attribute of wind. Maybe it is that. Perhaps the 7 luminaries' moon also came. In any case, I should go down and ask Ares's opinion. I descended towards the ground level and entered through the window into the inn where Ares was. When I did, I saw Ares making a difficult face and lost in thought. Oi, Ares. When I called him, he must have been in such a deep thought that he was so surprised and jumped up. For him to be able to daydream during the time of great disturbance, he really was carefree. Maybe I should be saying, as one would expect of a sheep. Why are you acting so surprised? I've had a look around from above, but everyone is debuffed with madness. It looks like other than the demon called Jupiter, there's someone else that wants to crush this country. Is that so? Use. TLN, not a question to Rupas in a raw, it was a statement/mutter to himself. I've decided to find that demon for now, what about you? Before I say anything, Rupas-sama, may I ask a question? While I was thinking about what to do from now on, Ares looked at me with a meek face. It seemed like a face that was worrying about something. I thought I should at least hear what he wanted to say, so I replied no problem to him. It's fine, speak. Thank you very much. So. If, amongst the ones causing this disturbance, there was someone from the 12 heavenly stars. If it was you, Rupas-sama, what would you do? Also, keep in mind they acted this way due to their loyalty towards you. Of course, I'll stop them even if I have to punch them. And then I will reward them afterwards. I'm happy that they're being loyal, but I don't desire for this country to perish. I did not know what this question meant. No, could it be the 12 heavenly stars were involved in this somehow? After I answered him for now, it was as if Ares had suddenly made up his mind and he showed a refresh.h.i+ng face. It really seems like the 12 heavenly stars are involved? Thank you very much, Rupas-sama. Now I'm clear on what I must do. Oi, wait, Ares. You can't be. It's fine, please leave it to me. I'll go and stop it. After saying it brightly, Ares jumped out without waiting for me to speak. Looks like the 12 heavenly stars was definitely involved. I quickly chased after him, but due to the rampaging flugels getting in the way, I didn't know where he went. In the end, I ended up completely losing him. Tisk, good grief, always giving me problems. Although he was like that, amongst the 12 heavenly stars, Ares was on the weaker side. If I was to put things bluntly, if the 12 heavenly stars fought each other, he would lose against the majority of them. If it was Libra, she would be able to win against half of them, so there would not be much to worry about. If anything, we would have to worry about the enemy. However, Ares is different. If the enemy was someone like Leon of the Lion, it would be checkmate without a doubt. Even if it was someone else, Ares would still be on the losing side most of the time. And this time's enemy, the 12 heavenly stars, which could cause a status debuff of madness, would be Agakeros. By comparison, it was not as bad, however, it was still too much for Ares. Ares, don't be hasty. The matter about the country would have to wait. I felt bad for Merak, but my subordinate's matter was of higher priority for me. Chaos and turmoil. Jupiter was laughing with satisfaction in midair whilst looking down on the country which was being driven by insanity. Weird wording, TLN, author wrote it like this: midway, there was an accident involving Rupas-Mafal visiting the country, however, it somehow ended up going well. With this, the country was over. Following this, Agakeros would continue to incite, causing the people of this country to kill each other. It was a shame Merak could not be killed, but I can do that next time when I have the opportunity. Either way, he would now be a naked king. There was no doubt there would be a lot of chances from now on to kill him. Not to mention, there's still a hope that Agakeros would just go on and kill Merak himself. He was one of the pillars of the 12 heavenly stars after all. Against the currently weakened Merak, he possessed more than sufficient ability to kill Merak. Either way, my role for this time is over. Well then, I'll quickly leave before that junk comes. You were going to run before who returned. As he heard a voice from his behind, Jupiter took a battle stance. He did not mishear it. There was no way that he would have. That was because, it was the existence, the enemy that he currently feared the most and the opponent he dreaded encountering. Too many, TLN, blame author. He split the sentence into small pieces that don't really flow well as an emphasis. What came into his sight when he turned was no different from what he thought he would see, but hoped would be different, a sight of a young girl dressed as a maid. One of the pillars of the 12 stars who served the supreme ruler Rupas, the one with the most destructive ability, star of the scales. The supreme 12 heavenly stars, Libra of the scales. TLN, here, the author used the full as compared to the usual. Cf. 1 pieces s.h.I plus Chibukai, usually used vs full t.I.tle oka s.h.I plus Chibukai, wh, what? Why was she back here? He barely managed to push that question back down his throat. According to the plan, this golem was not supposed to be back for 20 minutes. It was true that some time was spent on movement and incitement, however, there should still have been some time left. Nevertheless, she was here right now. Therefore, there was the only thing he could think of, only one conclusion he could reach. Venus that B.I.T.C.HFG screwed up. Either her ident.I.Ti was discovered or there were some unforeseen circu.misdances. He did not know about the reason. But what he did do know was, that this plan was going to fail completely. Yet again, he had the unfortunate encounter with this psychotic maid. Demon Jupiter of the 7 luminaries. Your fighting habits, data, and attributes have all been understood from the last fight. Should you continue your hostility, the probability of you winning is a mere 0.02%. I strongly recommend that you surrender. Should you refuse, I would like to inform you that the probability of you losing your life in the process is 48%. Additionally, there was this. Once this golem fought something once, she A.N.A. lists their habits and weakness, and apply it to the subsequent fights. In another word, once you have fought with her one time, you would be unable to use the same strategy and skills against her again. No, in practice you would use it again, however, she would have prepared a way to counter it. Attribute matchup was the worst possible. The difference in level was also evident. On top of that, she had A.N.A. list the previous fight. The situation was the worst case scenario for Jupiter. Jupiter used his wind magic to accelerate, drawing an unlikely route through the air. This method of flight, which used wind that he freely controlled, had once even led Libra by the nose. However, as if Libra understood the movement, she moved her line of sight to the direction where Jupiter was planning to head. I have already seen this before. He then saw a ray of light followed by his shoulder getting pierced. Gah! Target enemy's attack power decreased by 15%. Due to the pain, reaction speed decreased by 20%. Continuing the attack. Libra followed up with the next attack on Jupiter, who was groaning in pain. Taking out a machine gun from who knows where, she fired repeatedly. Jupiter was dodging on the spur of the moment, however, the bullets which he avoided had started homing in on him. Nay. These are homing bullets prepared by Master. You will not be getting away from me. Bullets were chasing him at high speed. That alone was fine. There was a higher job CLA.S.S of Archer called Gunner, which had the ability to use homing bullets. In this day and age, although they were rare, they still existed. However, as the crafter was that supreme ruler and the user was the 12 heavenly stars, there was just too much difference in the speed, the precision, the power, and the range to compare with the run-of-the-mill. The bullets schemed the clothing, hit his arms and legs, and stole his ability to continue fighting. Notwithstanding, he made a split decision to don the wind throughout his whole body to create a tornado and managed to repel all the bullets. A moment of relief was shattered right away as he saw Libra jumped in from above the tornado, causing his facial expression to freeze up. That move has also been predicted. Literally Iron Fist. TLN, play on the word, Ra is where means clenched fist, but the literal meaning is Iron Fist, and Libra is a golem made out of metal but is literally punch by metal. P.R.O. Nounced Tekken, yes reference, strong arms, made out of steel, SWA.N.G down on him. He blew his own body away with the wind at that moment, and the fist only grazed his cheek lightly. It was a light graze, or it should have been. However, right afterwards, Jupiter was flying towards the ground like a falling star. Tremendous impact and pain ran through his cheek, and he was flying into nsmas.h.i+ng past buildings. Yet, he was unable to stop until he was blown many tens of meters across, and after finally stopping, he collapsed onto the ground unsightly. He should have avoided a direct hit. It was supposed to have been a light graze. And yet, this power. This damage. Jupiter turned green and imagined the worst thing for him. If it had directly hit, his head would have had burst. Advising again. With that one attack, your reaction speed has decreased by 11%. The current probability of you winning has changed to 0.00072%. I strongly recommend that you cease to resist further and surrender. It was ap.r.o.announcement devoid of any leniency, compa.s.zion or any form of anger or emotion that may have been directed at an enemy. Yet currently for Jupiter, it was something more terrifying than anything else in the world. Author note, stop. If Jupiter gets captured due to Libra's tracking skill, the civil war that is about to go well will be ruined. Please don't get captured, Jupiter. If you get captured now, what will happen to the plan to crush Gjallarhorn? There's still HP left. If you endure past this, you can get away from Libra. Next time, Jupiter is captured. Everyone will also come and get. Author note end, TLN, reference to Pokemon. Theirs has been a reference to Pokemon, repeatedly since Chapter 1, and in J.A.Payne's Pokemon, the catchphrase is Pokemon/name ghetto, get, days. Imagine Naruto's sentence ender, the last line is a reference to that but Po part of Pokemon is censored. Rapasama. As I was running and dodging through the crowd of people, Dina jumped in from the side of the road. She was supposed to have been teleporting together with Libra, but by the looks of it, the arrangement of equipment was done. However, I could not find the all-important Libra, thus I decided to match my running speed with Dina to ask her about it. Dina, that was quite fast. What happened to Libra? The moment we returned, Libra-sama flew somewhere. It seems she detected Jupiter's presence. That was what I thought and nodded as I heard that. Jupiter was the one pulling the strings behind this whole incident, and he unveiled it all at once. What was unfortunate for him was that Libra came back. In any event, if Libra went to take care of that side, there's no need for me to worry about it. What I needed to do this time, was to do something about Ares, and the 12 heavenly stars that he went to try and punch. Where is Ares-sama? He flew away without even listening to me when I tried to stop him. It looks like the 12 stars is involved in this incident one way or another. 12 stars. One Dina and I leapt up and climbed on top of a house. And we repeatedly leapt to move, trying to find Ares. It also depends on the enemy, but one-on-one fights between the 12 heavenly stars is dangerous. I have to go out and stop them. Understood. I will keep you company. The two of us jumped around here and there, trying to find Ares. Good grief, I was not very good at this kind of investigation. Speaking of convenience, at times like this, I was envious of the beastkin. Jupiter was running away. Sprinting around the complexly laid out city, he ran into a back alley to try and avoid Libra from finding him. As narrow and small as possible, to a location which would be as hard to find as possible. But as if to get to the location before he managed to get there, Libra destroyed the houses in the way from the air and descended onto the ground before him. And without even a moment of delay, she started firing. Few thousands of bullets stormed past the downtown, clamoring with the sound of thunder. S.H.I+T. Continuing to run away, he stormed into the house at the side. Above all else, I needed to hide somewhere. Hide and regain my composure. Running while being out of breath, he put his hands on the cabinet. However, right afterwards, Libra stormed in by breaking through the wall and shattering the cabinets into pieces. TSSSKKKK. He was about to release wind magic out of reflex, however, Libra moved faster than he could react and lifted her left arm. Right that instant, Jupiter lost the sensation of his arm from his elbow onwards, followed by his arm dropping down to the floor. A single flash of the blade to Jupiter's attack was completely predicted and countered by Libra, resulting in Jupiter's arm getting cut off. Warning. Your attack power has decreased by 39% with this. Currently, the probability of you winning is S.H.I plus T. S.H.I plus T. Jupiter ran as his blood was dripping out of his arm. It's hopeless, fighting is hopeless. I can't win against that. The world we live in is completely different. We're completely in a different league. That's a monster. But he had confidence in speed. He had confidence in maneuverability. All he had to do was to run away. Run away and attempt to recover himself. He had no reason to go up against a monstrous, murderous doll like that. In any event, what was important was to run away. He jumped out of a house and then jumped into another house. However, it was as if she was making a statement that she was waiting for him. Libra was waiting at the entrance of the house gracefully and even gave him a bow. Warning. The probability of you making a successful escape is and he ran again. He sped through the downtown, Pus.H.I plus NG past and scattered a crowd of rioters that he himself made happen, then stormed into yet another house. He sped through the corridor, into the living room. What was awaiting him at the living room was Libra, who was leisurely sitting down and waiting for him. Warning, currently, the probability of making a successful escape has already dropped below 1%. I strongly recommend that you surrender. He ran, he turned, he jumped, he pushed the crowd of people, and he stormed into a house he saw. The previous time, he managed to escape by doing this. He used the city that was built like a maze, and he successfully managed to lose her. That's why he would be fine, that was what he told himself. He used wind magic to block the sound from escaping into the surrounding so that not even a single breath could be heard. Hey. He violently shook his shoulder up and down, ripping his cloth and wrapped it around his shoulder. Recovery item. No use, he did not bring any. He prioritized making himself lighter, therefore he left all the items behind. He put his back on the wall, and he looked out the window with caution. There. He saw that doll walking outside. Go. Go away. Don't look in this direction. Libra checked around the area, however, she eventually left the area. It's fine, I haven't been noticed. There was no indication that she noticed me. His heart was beating so loudly it almost seemed annoying, and he was sweating profusely. 1 second. There was no movement. 2 seconds. The inside of the house still remained silent. 3 seconds. Still no change as before. He instinctively let out a sigh of relief and lowered his caution. That instant, a wall behind Jupiter's back broke and 2 arms grew out of it, subsequently wrapping around his neck. I would like to advise you, using wind magic to remove the sound from your surrounding is meaningless. In this noisy city, if there is any location that is unnaturally silent, it has the opposite effect of letting me know that is the position you are at. A voice without a shred of emotion creepily quivered his eardrums, and the strength behind the arms increased. He was foaming at the mouth, and Jupiter's head was filled with fear and dismay. I'm going to be killed. I'm going to be killed now. He made a decision at the spur of the moment. He gathered his wind magic and blew at his own body, forcibly managing to get away from Libra's evil grasp. Of course, it was not as if Libra's strength was lowered. As the skin around his neck was stripped away, he was running whilst hemorrhaging all over. Sticking on the palms of Libra was the skin from his neck that was peeled away. However, without a slightest bit of agitation or confusion, she was looking at Jupiter's direction with a cold and indifferent sight. Jupiter looked up towards a mechanical doll with the eyes of a small animal that had lost all hostility, then sprang up onto his feet and started running. However, Libra did not immediately make chase but with a QI, moved her neck a little. Subsequently, with a pace that could be called slow or sluggish, she started following him without expression. Hey. Ha! Jupiter, who had yet again gotten into another building, sat down onto the floor and prayed wholeheartedly that he would not be found by her. As he could not even erase the sound with the wind, he covered his mouth with his hands and frantically tried to keep the noise down. He had not once prayed to the G.O.Dis until now. However, this time alone, he prayed. He would even offer his faith and belief. I plead wholeheartedly, G.O.Dis Sama, please let me get away from that. Please don't bring that doll in front of me. His teeth were rattling, and he could not stop the cold swear. AAA, what is this? I can't stop shaking. How pitiful. Is this the sight, the figure of the man who was feared as one of the 7 luminaries? What a laughingstock. A real monster that should be feared existed elsewhere. We are just a bunch of punks who got carried away and acted C.O.C.Ky during the monster's absence. Being made aware of such a thing, the man moved slowly like a baby without making a sound towards a mirror on the wall. Wall is no good. Don't put my back on the wall. Arms might come out of them again. Maybe this time my neck will be snapped before I can run away. Looking outside the window is also dangerous. She might be there. I need a mirror. I have to constantly monitor my behind using the mirror's reflection. That was what he had judged, and in truth, he was not wrong. It could be said that it was the ideal strategy that he could take at the time if he had carefully considered every factor. However, if one had to pick out one mistake that Jupiter made, it was that from the very beginning, there is no correct answer that he could make. Hi! He looked at the mirror, and his body froze. There. The doll was standing in the reflection of the mirror. Already inside the building, and standing right behind him. Libra did not make any noise, she just moved her lips. From that movement, Jupiter's fear grew larger. From the movement of the lips, he had learnt what she wanted to convey. I won't let you escape. Without caring that he was going to be injured, he jumped through the window, dropping down and rolling outside. He had no time to care about pain. He had no leisure to be able to stop and rest. Jupiter ran. Ever since he was born, he had never been this terrified. What was that thing? Why was she able to determine his location so precisely? Scary, terrifying. That inorganic doll was scary beyond anything else. Warning, 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 as if broken, every time they met, the same thing was repeated. However, one part of it decreased without fail, and that was the probability of him making a successful escape. Scary, terrifying. For the same sentence to be repeated mechanically and endlessly whilst being chased, it was terrifying. He was being chased to the end of the world. As if something like fatigue was irrelevant to her, he was being driven into the corner. Even though he was running out of breath. He went in front of a water fountain. Libra appeared from inside the water with the machine gun. He hid amongst the crowd of people. When he felt that he was tapped on the shoulder, it turned out to be Libra. He went to the gathering location of the idiots within the White Town and hid in the prearranged underground escape route. Libra was already inside and was on standby. He threw away his pride and jumped into a public rubbish bin to hide. But mere 3 seconds later, the whole bin was flipped upside down by Libra. He got inside a wooden box that he found nearby and hid. A few seconds later, the box was lifted up, and he saw Libra's eyes peeking into him. Wherever he went, she was there. Wherever he ran, she chased him. He was not able to escape from the doll's field of vision. If he turned around a corner of a road, she was already waiting for him there. The amount of time he could stay out of her field of vision didn't last for 10 seconds. Jupiter was screaming as he flew up. Most probably, from the day he was born to this day, he did not fly whilst giving his 110%. He could not care less that his body was screaming from the burden that it could not withstand. He also did not mind that his face was becoming distorted from the friction caused by the wind pressure. Controlled by the fear, Jupiter just flew in a straight line. And he jumped into the forest that was his safe hiding spot until the previous day. I was waiting for you. You have arrived here 5 seconds faster than predicted. Recalculating target speed, measurement error has been corrected. That moment, Jupiter's heart was completely gripped and governed by fear. It's impossible, I've now understood. This thing is. I can't escape from this tracking murder doll. Among the legends pertaining to the 12 heavenly stars, one told of the account in relation to the scales. At the time he saw it, he did not believe it. He thought that even if it was true, if it was him, he could successfully escape from it. But now, he was convinced. He understood. The legend stated. Once you were targeted by Libra of the scales, even if you ran to the deepest part of H.E.L.L, she would definitely chase you. Warning. I strongly recommend you cease resisting and surrender. In this situation, where there is no object in this vicinity beside you, I am able to fire the skill Brachium before you are able to run away. The probability of you winning is 0%. I repeat. I strongly recommend that you surrender. His legs shook. He had no sensation of his limbs. He knew. He knew of the skill, the existence of the slaughter weapon by the name Brachium. A terrifying ultimate final weapon that could completely slaughter and erase anyone and anything below certain strength without mercy once fired. A weapon that could even be called a signature move of Libra of the scales. In front of that skill, all tricks and defenses became meaningless, a skill that would completely obliterate anything in an instant. If you do not surrender within 10 seconds, Brachium will be activated and fired. Alternatively, should you make an attempt to run or show hostility, it will similarly be activated and fired. W.A.E. Commencing countdown. 10. 9. 8. W.A. Wait. Please wait. 7. 6. 5. Libra continued the countdown without emotion. There was no room for will, sympathy or personal feeling to stop. Just like a machine, just like a robot. Just counting down the 10 seconds timer to perform the execution. Jupiter was full of regret. He should have fought whilst he was still in the city. If he had done so, he at least had a minuscule chance of winning. But he ran and had gotten tired, the consequence of which, he had put himself in a position where Brachium could be fired without worry. Of course, there was no way for Jupiter to realize that Libra would still have fired Brachium within the city without a second thought if required. Nor could he remain level-headed enough to assess the fact that the countdown was merely a bluff. Now that it had come to this point, he no longer had any option. Even before he could run, even before he could resist, Brachium would be fired. And once fired, resisting was not possible. He would die without mistake. That was what ran through his head. He had convinced himself that he was already checkmated. 4. PL, please. Hey, please wait. 3. Eve, even a little is fine. 2. I'm begging you. B, I'm begging you. 1. I get it. I'll surrender. I'll submit. So please don't fire. Target's loss of will to fight determined. Terminating the activation of Brachium. In front of an inanimate fear itself, Jupiter's heart was completely broken. 3. Whether it be his pride or self-confidence, he had completely yielded them to the fear known of this emotionless doll. His whole body was drenched in sweat, his heart was palpitating extremely fast, and his teeth were rattling against each other. Due to the terror and despair, the area between his legs was stained, and even his almost non-existent vanity had completely disappeared. At that same moment, Libra had stopped her countdown. The outcome of the battle was clearly determined. Going back to the capital city even whilst knowing that he was targeted by the doll. That was Jupiter's greatest mistake. Asterisk, you were here after all, Agacaros. Ares, huh? At the park they had met the other day. There, 2 of the 12 stars had again confronted each other. However, The outlook of the situation and the pressure released by the two could not be compared to when they had previously met. Because of their conviction and loyalty towards Rapaz, they were more than prepared to remove their obstacle even if it was going to cost them their lives. Ares was trying to stop Agakeros, who was trying to take action contrary to Rapaz's wishes. Agakeros was trying to kill one of the heroes for Rapaz even if it had meant going against Rapaz's wishes, and to do so, he had to take Ares down. The two that could be said to be the most similar amongst the 12 stars held on to their belief and conviction, and for the second time met under unfortunate circumstances. It was you that drove the people of this country into madness, right? That's not something Rapaz-sama wishes. Stop it right now. Those words. It seems you really are intending to stop me. The ominous aura that Agakeros adorned became a shade darker and thicker. Opposing that, Ares wrapped himself in a rainbow-colored flames. You think you can win? Huh, Ram. Even I'm not the same as 200 years ago, goat. Ares's surrounding got affected by Mesartham and warped like a mirage. The water in the park's fountain was evaporated away and the ground was grilled. Agakeros's surrounding was warped and tainted dark. The trees withered and the insects which were flying in the vicinity were all annihilated. Are you really going to do it? If you stop, this whole fight can be avoided. Ridiculous. Agakeros stuck his hands out. At the same time, Ares moved his body from his position, followed right afterwards by a black shockwave running through his original position. Gorging into the ground and shattering all the building in the way, the shockwave still did not show any sign of stopping, eventually disappeared out of the city itself. Phew. Ares leapt up and fired a kick that was enveloped in flames. The simple act of Agakeros guarding against that created a giant crater in the ground, turning the park into a wasteland. However, Agakeros himself was not affected at all and made a countering attack back at Ares. Gyua. A small frame was blown away. After smas.h.i plus ng through many buildings, Ares spun midair and landed back down as if nothing had happened. Chasing after that, Agakeros flew up and slammed down a black shockwave from the sky. Against that, however, Ares held his hand like a sword and blew the shockwave away with one hand. The shockwave that was blown away to the day after tomorrow was flying high up into the sky, eventually disappearing away after scattering all the cloud that was in its path. Ha! Ares flew and slammed his fist at Agakeros, who instinctively crossed his arm to block the attack. The surrounding air shook as if an earthquake had occurred in the air with the two as the epicontre, blowing Agakeros away like he was a cannonball. Pas.sing through the city, Pas.sing through the mountain, and kept flying through the air to a distant place. However, it was also Ares who stopped it. Ares ran ahead of Agakeros, who was being blown away, and this time kicked him straight up, sending Agakeros high into the air. And he jumped. Again going ahead and around Agakeros. Tsuryae. Locking both his arms in a grapple, he performed a double sledgehammer. Slamming into Agakeros's head with all his might, sending him back down to the ground. Without a moment of rest, Ares generated flames and continuously fired. The rainbow-colored flame B.A.L.L.S dug into the ground one after another, hitting Agakeros and burning him countless times. However, it seemed that barely any damage got through with something like this. Tearing through the smokes, many brilliant lights ran through, targeting Ares. A high-level moon attribute arcane magic, Luna Shooter. A magical ray with high accuracy and high destructive power that ran straight. A high-level moon attribute arcane magic, Luna Blast. A black bullet magic that simultaneously locked onto 3 bodies and homed in. An extremely high-level moon attribute arcane magic Lunatic Rain. An area of effect skill that turned all moonlight into a rain of light and annihilated all enemies in the vicinity. Even outside of those 3, many moon attribute high-level and upper-level arcane magic were continuously fired like it was raining. However, by blowing flames out from both of his hands, Ares was able to move freely in the air and was able to dodge through all the magic that was sent at him. Left and right, up and down. Remaining calm to the hectic and ever-changing vision, he flew in and out of even the tiniest gap between the magic. Mesartham. While charging, his form distorted. The young boy's small frame was enveloped in a giant sheep-shaped flame and accelerated. In an instant, he transformed into a monster who was wrapped in a rainbow-colored flame, and his body slammed right into Agakeros with all that he had. If Rapaz saw this scene, she would have said, "That is not how you use that skill as a Tsukumai, for at the very least, in the game that she knew of, there was no way for the skill to be used like this." Agakeros was forcibly blown away, and as one would expect, he made a low groan. Nevertheless, he was also one of the 12 stars. While he was being blown away, he held his hand up towards Ares and released his ultimate skill. Denebalgdi. One giant and conspicuous black shockwave ran in a straight line towards Ares, swallowing him whole. Both sides were directly hit by each other's ultimate skills, raising black and rainbow-colored pillars climbing up into the sky. Silence lasted for a few seconds. Breaking that silence was Agakeros standing up. Following that, Ares showed himself by coming out of the smokes with his clothing in tatters and revealing his exposed shoulders. Both sides had suffered damage. However, it was not a type of injury where it would become a hindrance for the fight to continue on. "You're strong as expected, Agakeros. Even after 200 years, your arcane magic power hasn't gone down, huh? You too, Ares. You've gotten considerably better at what you do." Both laughed at each other as if to acknowledge the other party. However, this was a battlefield, what was in front of them was an enemy. They had to stand by their wills and their convictions. The two pillars of the 12 stars again looked and ran at the enemy. An underground realm that could be called H.E.L.L in this world, Helheim. That was the place that Agakeros was born. If the sky was where mana was thin, the place where mana was the thickest would be the bottom of the earth. The excessive amount of mana in the environment, which could not be compared to that of above ground, mutated every creatures of the underground realm into hideous forms similar to the devils in myths. An evil-looking existence transformed by the essence of magic. As such, due to the others who feared them, they were called devils. Those that became transformed by this location were mostly the creatures that preferred to live in the dark places or caves, such as the bats, lizards, and spiders. If one were to think of it like that, they would not think that a goat would exist in this location. However, the chances were, some humanoids that had decided to live in this location had probably brought livestock together with them. Yet, in this day and age, there was no method for anyone to be able to verify if that really was the case. That was because there was not a single humanoid in Helheim right now. There were only a few remaining traces to suggest that they might have once been there in the very far history. Even in this realm, Agakeros was born with an extraordinary amount of mana and was distinguished as the mighty Grand Devil. As a result of an ancestor who had preyed upon the mutated bats, he inherited the features of the bats, namely in the ominous devil's wings on his back. A goat's head, a human's body, and the wings of a bat. A hybrid composing of three animals, no, magical beasts, that would not normally have mixed together. That was Agakeros. He believed himself to be the most perfect form of a devil. He was the only one of his species in the underground realm. There was no other devil that had the same features as him, the one and only in existence. Therefore, he had no question as to whether he really was the ruler of the darkness. From his point of view, even the demons were inadequate and incomplete. He believed that they were not the existence who were loved, contaminated, by mana. To begin with, they're just an imitation. They're created by the intentional concentration of mana. I do not know who created and for what purpose, but the demons are not a race that evolved naturally. Someone had intentionally gathered and condensed the mana together, and after ignoring the natural course of the event, had forcibly created those sham of an existence. Without a single exception, the entire race is a deteriorated reproduction of the Demon King. Having said that, the real Demon King is also something different. It's true that thing is something magical, but there's also something divine about it, something that could even be set off as that abominable G.O.dis. That was why Agakeros could not believe in her existence. Although originating from the sky, a place where a minimal amount of mana existed, her jet black wings did not contain a single strand of light. Shrouded in denser mana than that of the devils, she pushed forward on her own path as if to say that she had no need for the love from the G.O.ds. She had looked at Agakeros and had sneered. I see, so this is a devil. I was also shunned and called a devil ever since I could remember, but, what a shame, now that I look at it, such a faint existence. Faint was probably directed towards Mana. Agakeros could not rebut those words. That was because she was too dense. How many demons had she killed? How many monsters did she take down and devour? The amount of mana was so high and so dense that there was no other way but to think that she had taken in all the mana of every living thing she had culled. The amount so high that even Agakeros had felt fear. And she herself had the whole body polluted by that. Living beings became affected and mutated by being exposed to mana. They turned into monsters. Which meant that she was probably a monster. Whilst originally being a flugel, a species that was loved by the heaven, she had kept on taking in mana, and was in the process of mutating into a separate species. A predetermined evolution path by G.O.dis, a form that one should be. She had ignored that path and was transforming on her own. He had understood. This woman was someone that not even the G.O.dis could control. An existence that moved independently of the will of the G.O.dis, the king of mana, someone worthy of being called the Demon King too. By the time Agakeros noticed, he had kneeled and bowed in front of the black-winged ruler. Lady is. You are the real, my king. He had capitulated without even fighting. And he had not felt shameful of that. It was simple, things that should have been the way it was, became the way it was. The disparity that was determined from the moment they had first met. The difference in the rank of what it meant to be mana. That had caused Agakeros to bow down as a retainer. And the king, seeing that, just simply laughed quietly. Asterisk amongst the 12 stars, Aries and Agakeros' roles most resembled each other's. What was sought from these two stars were hindering and disturbance of enemies. Aries achieved this with the skill of a magical beast, while Agakeros achieved it using arcane magic. Although they were distinguished from each other depending on the situation and the enemy, amongst the 12 stars, they had sat in the position that was most similar to each other. Ram and goat. Motif between the two was also very similar, as such, it was inevitable that these two stars were intimate with each other. However, the two's personalities were the polar opposite. Aries was gentle and timid. Agakeros was hot-headed and would use any means necessary to achieve his objectives. And the consequence of those differences manifested themselves as the difference in achieving their desired result. Aries interfered against the enemies for the protection of his allies, whereas Agakeros interfered with the enemy merely as a means to push them into the corner and harm them. There, the question of which was better was meaningless. Whatever the reason, for Rupas, there was no doubt that both were useful fighting powers. Notwithstanding, when it came to direct confrontation, there was an advantage for the goat who used his power as a mean to harm others. Ku. Aries blew flames out of his hands and started flying all around. Chasing after Aries were countless hand-like tentacles made out of incorporeal darkness. It was a troublesome interference arcane magic where once the target was caught by them, they would be stunned and be affected with speed decreasing debuff. It was an arcane magic without counter, such that Aries had no other option but to avoid. If it was Rupas, she may have been able to say who cares about some debuff that lowers some of your stats, whilst charging in and shredding the tentacles into 1,000 pieces and taking Agakeros down. However, such a feat was not possible for Aries. No, rather than not possible, perhaps it was more correct to say that he would lose if he did something like that. For Rupas who possessed exceptional combat abilities, some interferences or disturbance to her ability might not overly affect the fight. However, for Aries, it was detrimental. After all, let alone someone of equal strength, the enemy was someone who possessed greater ability than himself. To suffer a decrease in his stats would have directly led to his defeat. Aries dived towards the ground and slammed the flaming fist into it. When he did, the ground greatly shook as if there was a local earthquake on that spot, jolting everything nearby. Earthquake. It was one of the signature moves that he had been taught by Rupas. Originally an earth attribute skill, but because the skill was quite useful, he had taken a liking to it. The movement of the tentacles all stopped at once, and at the same time, Ares quickly dashed forward. Even if it was Agakeros, he would not have been able to remain standing after repeatedly taking Ares's ultimate skill. As such, Ares again turned his whole body into a flame and tried to charge in. Rainbow-colored flame drew a track on the ground as Ares's whole body flew in a straight line. And putting all his power into it, he struck his fist forward, piercing Agakeros's body. Pierced, and he thought. This was not it. This was not Agakeros at all. It was a fake created by the moonlight's reflection, an imitation. A trap laid out to hunt down pitiful creatures who might have been lured in by the beautiful night with moon. As if a hologram made out of the shadow cast by the moonlight, it was one of the moon attributes' arcane magic. This arcane magic, shadow, was used to toy the enemy with the image with no physical substance. If Rupaz was here, she would have explained the skill as such, putting it bluntly, it's just arcane magic that decreases enemies' accuracy. Os.H.I+. Caught you. Ares. Agakeros attacked without giving any break to Ares, who was still stuck in a delay after his attack. 4. He used his unique skill Deneb-Algedi, a condensed moon attribute mana cannon. Not only did the skill come with very high damage, it included an added effect for the victim to be unable to recover the damage received by the skill. As the name of the skill suggested, he combined his arms together and started condensing darkness on his palm. It was impossible to dodge. There was also not enough time to guard against the skill. Hence the only option left was to endure through the skill. Ares closed his eyes shut tightly and prepared within himself to take the pain that was about to come. It'll be fine, I will still be able to remain standing even if I take the skill. If there's a second strike, it might be quite harsh. And honestly speaking, not being able to use recovery skill to recover is very painful. Having said that, it's not like there's no chance for a turnaround. Die. Oi, he just said die. Although Ares was thinking like that, he also thought Agakeros was acting like Agakeros. His true nature is really that of a devil. Although it was held down normally, once he was affected by emotion, even if the opponent was an ally, he could easily say unsettling things. Of course, Ares couldn't die for Agakeros, nor could Ares afford to die. Ares had to endure through it and had to think about what would happen afterwards. In front of Ares, who was thinking along those lines, Black Wings cut in with irregular speed. You fool, what's the point of killing your ally? One line, muttering a line out of exasperation, she stopped the Deneb-Algedi with one hand. A black flash splashed on the impact like a lightning and the after effect gouged into the ground. Nevertheless, the person who had stopped the attack was not even slightly affected. In this day and age, there was only a very limited number of individuals who were capable of achieving such a feat in the face of 12 heavenly stars. One of them was the creator G.O.Dis. An omnipotent and almighty G.O.Dis who might not actually exist. One of them was the Demon King. An inauspicious enemy who dictated the entire demon race. One of them was the Vampire Princess. One of the legendary 7 heroes who even in this age, retained her full power. A king who ruled over the night. And one of them was, the Black-Winged Supreme Ruler. Sovereign. 5. With a shrieking sound, Agakeros's ultimate skill was punched away. With a scarlet appearance, the darkness that was scattered away to the surrounding left traces of destruction. However, the darkness did not reach Ares, who was behind her. The attack was completely cut away cleanly by her. Lady is. Oh, your lady is. Agakeros shouted out with a shaky voice which was filled with delight, with great joy. In response to that, she untied her hair, took off her GLA.S.SES and removed the bad disguise she was wearing. What appeared in front of Agakeros was the appearance of his master that he had waited 200 years to reunite. It's great that you are also in great health. It's been a while, Agakeros. After seeing the smile of the subordinate who had the appearance of a devil, she herself smiled back. The figure was that of his master that he had sworn his loyalty to, an appearance no different from 200 years ago. Standing in front of Rupaz Mafal, the retainer was shaking in delight. So what was even the point of me disguising myself? Yes, I'm that person that needlessly cross-dressed as a man, which eventually had no meaning whatsoever. I'm that Ruppaz. Haha, go ahead and laugh, Vegetable Prince 6. Even though I disguised myself before coming out, I was seen through with one look by Agakeros. Anyways, ma. Is it that? I guess I should say it was a close call. It was so close that my arms were tingling, but in the end, it was not something important. More than that, I was surprised that I just punched away Agakeros' skill. I will state it clearly. I don't have any skill like that. Fundamentally, the skills that I possessed were limited to attack type or self-buffs. I had thought that defensive skills from the Alchemist or Acolyte CLA.S.S were enough for me. Furthermore, if it was not enough, I could always be supplemented by the party members or the 12 heavenly stars. I was informed, within divine magic, there existed some defensive skills that could defend against the enemy's arcane magic, but I had no time to be using such a skill. In other words, all I did was to simply punch the attack. As I thought, although this world felt like the game, it was not the game. It was possible for me to do some things that could not have been done in the game, and similarly, it was a possibility that I would not be able to do some things that could be done if I was within the game. To begin with, if it was a game, it was not possible for someone to storm in between the attack after the attack animation had ended and the spell cast. Anyways, for the time being, Agakeros that I am currently looking at. He really has that ominous appearance. He looked just like what the society perceived devils to be. Yet, with such appearance, he was on his knee and pouring tears out of his eyes. He was praying at me as if his emotion was bursting forth. What is this? Some religious cult? Satanism? Or more like, if you're a devil, don't be praying like that. What am I? A demon king? Actually I'm something like that. What is it? You really made me worried. I called out to him whilst he was sobbing and creaking a small puddle on the ground. No, I was thinking of giving him one good punch when I met him, but I lost the will to do so after seeing such a scene. The appearance of him sobbing really portrayed how much he had worried about me, or rather about Ruppaz, and as such not even I could come to hit him at that moment. I gave Agakeros, whose crying voice was shaving into my sanity, a light pat on his shoulder. You were dutiful and loyal. Raise your head, Agakeros. Yes. When I told him to raise his head, for some reason he remained hunched back like a cat and only raised his head. Is this what you call that? He had probably wanted to raise only his head, but because he had no legs he ended up looking hunched backwards? Agakeros, I appreciate that you trying to follow through with the attitude and action of the retainer, but that posture comes off quite discourteous instead. I'm sure you've already heard from Ares, but I don't seek to do anything towards the people of this country. I understand that you wanted to do it for me. However, it's quite troublesome for me if this country collapses. Can you remove the madness debuff from the people of this country? With it, I'll overlook this incident. Yes. If that is what my lady desires. Agakeros lowered his head and started mumbling some incantation. He was probably reciting the incantation to remove the curse. Listening to Agakeros, Ares muttered with dissatisfaction, even though you didn't listen when I told you. If I may say something, Ruppaz-sama. Even if I remove the debuff, the citizens of this country most likely would not calm down. What? To begin with, my debuff only causes the enemy's emotion to be amplified. Which means, I merely gave them the push. As a consequence, even if I were to remove the debuff, that doesn't sound too good. I remained silent to avoid showing agitation on the outside, but was fluid U.S.tiered on the inside. No wait, hang on, it's fine. It's still not the time to be fluid U.S.tiered. If it's Libra, she'll do something about it. The chances are, Jupiter had already been captured by Libra by now. If we stuck Jupiter in front of the citizens, it might be possible to reverse the situation. It was not possible for me to personally go out in front of the people, but I could leave the explaining part to Dina or Libra. There's still a method. We just have to bring forth the person that was pulling the strings in front of the people and redirect the emotions towards him. Dina, it's fine for me to leave the negotiation to you, right? Of course. Please leave it to me. When I asked her the question, Dina was who hiding in the surrounding tree's shadow to avoid getting caught in the fight stuck her head out. She seems to always be on standby in a good and safe position every time. Was this what you called diligence or was it something else? With a goo, she raised her thumb with a face full of confidence. This Dina is not good at fighting but is good with words. I'll skillfully manage this incident caused by Agakero-sama for you. Rupa-sama. Agakero strangely looked at Dina first then looked towards me. Ah, this development seems familiar. I guess you could say when it's the third time, I'm quite used to it. Although I already predicted what Agakero's was going to say next, I decided to at least listen to what he was going to say. In any event, he was probably going to say he didn't know who Dina was. Is this woman, perhaps, the advisor that skillfully used stealth to always blend in with the background? WH. At 7__, author note, G Master who turned into a monster Kazakeza a spider that turned into a monster Wasa some random and unknown creator that turned into a monster Kisha AAAAA. Rupas, appearance-wise, that goat is the least objectionable. Author note end, __1 TLN, play on words. Evil/bad in J.A. Paints can be written as Aku, part of magic/arcane/mana is the word ma, and combining them together is ak.u.ma, which means the devil. 2 Okay, so, similar to above, another play on word. Same word ma, is used to mean magic/mana. Mamano, equals magical monster, king of mana/magic, mu, means a demon/magic king, and the demon king is also written the same. 3, and. Both an animal but signifying the constellation. Because unlike in English, there's no distinguishment between the animal and the constellation when written in J.A. Paints. And Raw used the word motif. 4 Delay frame/vulnerability frame opposite of more well-known iframe, invulnerability frame. In MMO, unless within exceptions such as animation cancel mechanics or characters who specialize in combo and is able to loop perfectly, have delay frames after casting a skill, a user of the skill is often stuck in animation or there's a small pause before they can use another skill or move their character. For a few frames, a user is vulnerable to receiving attacks and counters. There's no official term like iframe counterpart but sometimes called delay or vulnerability frame, or even just cooldown, depending on the game's community. Not to be confused with input delay frame. 5 Refer to HA from chapter 32's footnote 6 TLN, I don't know who this is referring to. Ed, no idea what is referring to either. 7 Luul. Good on you Dina, you were remembered. Where's the fanfare at?